Welcome to Test Chamber 4. The Enrichment Center regrets to inform you that this next test is impossible. Quit now, and cake will be served immediately.
I want cake.
What's up, my wizards? It's Dev from MTG, the channel down there. Well, something really cool happened. You've probably heard by now. All of Battle for Zendikar is completely spoiled, which we did not expect to happen until like midway through next week or something like that. So it's here, and that's awesome. All I've been doing pretty much all day is brewing around with this set, trying to wrap my mind around it, honestly, because there's a lot of stuff going on here and a pretty good little shake-up to the format. A lot of different mechanics that we're going to explore. Over the next week, I'm going to release at least 4 of these videos in this Brewing with Battle for Zendikar series, starting with today, Landfall. Well, I think that Landfall is a really good way to ease into Brewing with Battle for Zendikar and start, really coming to terms with these mechanics and how they're going to change the format, We already know how Landfall works, we've already played Landfall before, and the Landfall cards in this set are fairly straightforward. So, what we're going to do is sort of explore our options together here at all the different slots in the deck and sort of figure out how we want to play the deck, because there's a couple of different ways. First of all, I definitely want to play green and red. I wanted to maybe play Naya at first, adding white to that color combination. But in the end, I decided that for consistency's sake, and for a couple of different reasons, I just didn't think that white had the most powerful cards. It does have an angel that's fairly good, but is very, very expensive. So I ended up cutting white from the pool of cards that I'm going to include when I'm talking about Landfall. Here, we're just going to talk about Gruul colors, red and green. Well, first let's explore our options at the 1-drop slot, and the direction that we take here is going to heavily influence the direction that we go in with the rest of our deck that we're building here. First of all, Jedi Offshoot, which sounds like Jedi, which is awesome. But anyway, Jedi Offshoot is sort of the mini Courser of Crewfix, and it's awesome. I definitely think if you wanted to build a more rampy sort of version of this deck that plays a lot of top-end threats, Offshoot would be good in helping you get to the late game and gum up the game board early game. So that would be an important card. Now, on to more aggressive things, though. There's the aggro Scythe Leopard. Now, I'm going to definitely play Scythe Leopard in the deck almost no matter what. I've been wanting to play with this card for a while, and I want the deck to be a little aggressive. And finally, Dragon Master Outcast, which is sort of the mid-range option. At 1-drop in this deck, we've got a control option, sort of, mid-rangey in Jedi Offshoot, a very mid-range option in Dragon Master Outcast, and a very aggro option in Scythe Leopard. So, but among these creatures, I think Dragon Master Outcast is almost certainly the best. Obviously, no actual landfall trigger on the card, but in a landfall deck that's playing a lot of lands and a lot of ways of getting those lands onto the board, a card like Outcast can be really, really, really good, especially considering we can start actually getting dragons off of him as early as the 5th turn. And he's really, really good in multiples, but considering we're playing him so late game, for the most part, he's not usually really a 1-drop unless, there's a bit of versatility there. You can trade him early game against aggro, but that's just one thing you can do. It doesn't happen very often. Often you play this guy as a 5 or 6-drop creature, so we don't have to play as many copies of him. Now, the direction I'm going to take the deck in, at least for this deck tech right now, is slightly more aggressive. So we can't play all the 1-drops in the world. I would like to play a full playset of Scythe Leopard and probably 3 Dragon Master Outcast and relegate Jedi Offshoot to the board, definitely. I don't know how much of a problem aggro is going to be at the start of this new format. I don't think it's going to be too powerful, although there are some cool aggro options, which we'll cover in later videos in the series. But in any case, Jedi Offshoot I think will do a fantastic job out of the sideboard for us. We have a couple of different options here at 2-drop, but only a couple in Gruul colors. If we want to play 2-drops at all, which I think is fairly important in the direction we're taking the deck, we play Scythe Leopard, we want to play a 2-drop creature as well so that we can really start pummeling them in the early game. Although we are playing some spells in the 2-drop slot too. But in an aggro deck, the 2-drop slot is going to be the most filled out slot in the deck. Now, I think the 2 options here are between McKinney Slide Runner and Snapping Gnarlid. Now, there are a couple of different pros and cons here. I definitely think that Slide Runner looks like the better card because of the trample, but of course, there's an extra point of toughness on the green one, Snapping Gnarlid, and it has, we're able to produce green in these decks much more reliably than red, so it's a little bit more consistent. But for the purposes of what we're doing, I don't want to play both of them, but I do want to play probably a play set of Slide Runner, because we are going to be putting a lot of lands into play some turns, and I like the fact that this can get up to 5 power trampler in some situations, so I think I'm going with that. In the 2-drop slot, I also like Swell of Growth an awful lot. I think it's sort of a mini, and it harkens back to a Target's Command, which we will certainly be playing in this deck too. That's the other 2-drop I'd like to address. Not out of Battle for Zendikar, but a pretty necessary card in this deck, especially with, we're going in the aggressive direction, sort of. So we are going to be playing cards at the top of our curve to help finish the game out. Definitely, especially with all the lands we'll be playing, we have to have something to do with them. But in the early game, I think it's nice to have something like Swell of Growth and a Target's Command, definitely, to help us get those drops, by the way, help trigger Landfall in the early game, and deal 3 damage with something like a Target's Command, or give all of our creatures a buff, plus the Landfall buff, if we elect to play the land as well. There's a lot of things we can do. With Scythe Leopard, we can, second turn Swell of Growth and deal something like 5 damage. That's pretty cool. We can do those same tricks with a Target's Command as well, so that's really awesome early game to sort of apply pressure, and we can do these things at instant speed as well, which is really, really cool. I want to address the retreats, which I don't necessarily want to play either of. Of course, the red one is very, very aggressive, and that's good, but it does take up 3 of our mana and 1 of our whole turns for the most part. I will say, as far as the retreats go, either one of them could find a place in the sideboard if you want to get a little bit more aggressive against certain decks, play the red, or if you want to outlast some decks, play the green in the sideboard. Both options are good. In the 3-drop slot, it's almost definitely certain, no matter what, that we want to play Undergrowth Champion. There are definitely turns where you can put this into play and immediately get a counter or 2 on it, depending on what you're doing. So, do enjoy what the card looks like it can do, but I'm not entirely committed. Now, in a Landfall deck like this, especially only a 2-color one, the card is an auto-include, definitely. Now, the other one is Tunneling Geopede in the 3-drop slot, which I don't think we're going to end up playing. Sort of an Impact Trimmers-y thing for Landfall, which I kind of like, but at the same time, I don't know exactly how much damage we'll deal with this over the course of the game. Is this what we want to be doing for 3 mana? I'm playing spells for 3 mana, yes. Not a bad idea to put creatures on the board, but this is very vulnerable. It can just be wild slashed away, ultimate price. There's a lot of different things to be done with this, which can be said about a lot of our creatures, yes, don't get me wrong, but I'm just not sure this provides enough value over the course of the game to warrant an auto-inclusion. Now, we do have a blank spot a little bit in the 4-drop slot, and there are some things that we could play Grove Rumbler and the thing from Magic Origins that has, PT equal to the lands we control, but I just don't think they do enough for us. Grove Rumbler, I think, is sort of subpar and doesn't look entirely competitive to me, and the same thing can be said of the thing from Magic Origins. Neither one of them look incredible to me. Zendikar Incarnate, that's the card's name. Neither one of them look exactly right to me, and if we're going to play a 4-drop, I'm just not sure it's either one of these. I want to look at the Akoum Firebird and the dragon as well, Akoum Hellkite. Both of these, I may include the one of Akoum Firebird, that's possible, but again, I'm not sure about the Hellkite. Now, I could be very, very wrong on the Hellkite. Being able to do 2 damage if you play a mountain, and just even the 1 damage if you play any land, is probably very good, but 6 mana for a 4/4 flyer, I'm just not sure is where we want to be, but the incremental advantage on the card is pretty awesome looking, so it could warrant an inclusion. I'd just rather be playing other stuff that high up on the curve, but we'll get there because we can't play all the expensive cards. I want to play the expensive cards that have maybe the most impact for us, but over the course of the long game here, the Hellkite could be very good, and it'd be nice to have the Firebird too, the Phoenix, just in case we needed some sort of recursion, and decent mana sink too, because we're going to be having a lot of lands floating about. I'll quickly talk about Nissa's Renewal here. I'm not playing Nissa's Renewal in what we're doing here, but if you're going the route that more employs Jedi Offshoot in the main deck, a lot of rampers in the early game so that you can get to these huge drops late game, which we're doing a little bit of here, but we're not entirely dedicated to that strategy. I would say Nissa's Renewal might not be terrible. You get 3 landfall triggers off of it, you untap the next turn with a ton of mana, and it's sort of a Sphinx's Revelation type effect, you get to affect the board a little bit in this case, and you get 7 life, which negates like 2 whole attack steps in the early game for your opponent, which isn't terrible. And just, again, you untap with a ton of mana, and you get the landfall triggers. It all sounds so good, but in a deck that's really aggressive, I'm just not sure that's what we want to be doing. But in a more mid-rangey deck that's not so devoted to early game damage, I could definitely see this being a good inclusion. Now on to the cards I do want to play at the top of the curve. I want to play some Oblivion Sower and definitely some Omnath. Oblivion Sower is just awesome. We're able to probably get at least 1, if not more, landfall triggers off of this, and it ramps us, which is super awesome. I really see no downside to playing the card. It does everything that we want to do in this deck, and there are times where it's just a huge blowout. And worst case scenario, you don't get any lands from them, but what you do get is a huge body that's left behind, and you're able to get there on the 4th, 5th turn. So it's really not bad, even if you don't hit any lands. And if you do, you're gonna hit some landfall triggers, and it's gonna be awesome for you. Now, Omnath is, I think, an auto include in the deck for its 7 mana, but with some of the things that we're doing in the deck, obviously we're playing a lot of lands, 26 lands in this deck, because landfall is so good, and we have a lot of good lands from Battle for Zendikar, but we're also playing some spells that give us some lands, so we have to have something to do with it. We can't just be an aggro deck. So I want to play something at the top of the curve, and I think Sower and Omnath are both incredible options. Now, I can also see this deck playing Dragonlord Atarka, just because it's probably the best, high money thing in the format. Now, you could also play, what is it, Void Winnower? I can't remember. The thing that they can't play even costed things. Or you could just go all the way and play Ulamog, although I can foresee the deck having a problem playing 10 mana things, so there is that to consider. Now, I might play Natural Connection in the deck, but I sort of think Nissa's Pilgrimage is just straight up better for what we're trying to do. We want to produce more green in the deck, almost certainly, no matter what. So I would say that Nissa's Pilgrimage is probably just overall better, in that it ensures more landfall triggers for us. It's good even without the spell mastery, and creates a landfall trigger immediately, just like Natural Connection does. But more often than not, we're going to be looking for the green anyway, and I just think that Nissa's Pilgrimage provides more value in a landfall deck than something like Connection does. And I don't want to play too many of these cards anyway. But that being said, out of Magic Origins, I'll also play Animist Awakening, because it has the potential to be a huge bomb for us later on, especially if we already have an Omnath out. This could just be ridiculous in-game bomb for us. Could finish very well. And it can get us a lot of landfall triggers on our smaller guys too. And it can help us get to Dragon Master Outcast early. There's a lot of things the card could do for us. And who could resist the temptation to play at least one of Animist Awakening in the deck? I can't. Also, for Magic Origins, I think it's a no-brainer that we play Nissa in the deck, which helps us get the land drops that we need. This guarantees a landfall trigger, and helps us get to our higher-costed things, which is really good. And the deck is fairly synergistic with her, in that we're playing a lot of lands. We're getting a lot of lands on the battlefield. We'll be able to flip her with, very, very, very much ease. So I think Nissa's a no-brainer in the deck. All that being said, this is sort of what I think preliminarily the main board of the deck will look like. Don't worry, I'll give you the actual land base in just a second. We see Scythe Leopard, Dragon Master Outcast here in the early game, and then the Slide Runner. But I think the deck could swap out any of those creatures, especially Slide Runner, for Hangerback Walker. I could definitely see that being a thing, especially if you want to play Retreat Kazandu in the deck. That could definitely be a very synergetic card with Hangerback Walker. And Hangerback Walker wouldn't be the worst 2-drop you could play in the deck, because we're generating an awful lot of mana, and so this would be, very good in any stage of the game, which it already is in every deck. But later on in the game, when you've got 7, 8, 9 mana, you can make this a 4/4 immediately with 8 mana and just start wrecking face. They have a horrible decision to make immediately. So that's the Hangerback Walker could work in a deck like this, but I've got a more purely landfall strategy here. So let me know how you feel about this, and maybe what you'd change if it was your deck to build, because I know there's a lot of different ways to build landfall right now, and I think that a lot of people may actually lean towards the more rampy, mid-rangey version that sort of replaces Courser of Kruphix with Jedi Offshoot, and does some other things. Retreat to Kazandu, maybe a card in that deck. So let me know how you feel about what I've done, and I acknowledge that there are other things we could do. Now look forward later in this week to allies. We're going to do allies, maybe a couple of different ways, but at least the way I really want to do, which is probably Mardu allies. We're going to do +1/+1 counters, the Hardened Scales thing with Battle for Zendikar, and we're going to do Eldrazi. Obviously, we have to do Eldrazi, and I think it's probably the most complex thing to do in the format. And we're also going to brew up 4 or probably 5 color control. So, and that hopefully will all be in the next week, even with the set reviews, which would be coming out by Monday. So subscribe if you haven't done that yet, and come back to the channel and check this out, because we've got a lot of content coming up in the next week or so, so stick with us. I'm Deb from SBMTG. If you enjoyed the content, like, share, comment, and subscribe, and let us know how you feel, man. I'll see you guys later. Thanks for watching, my wizards.